Clara Mae Sullivan pressed her 8-month-old daughter against her chest so tight she feared she might crush her. The wagon was sinking. The driver was gone, swept away before he could even scream, and the water kept rising. "Please, God," she whispered into her baby's wet hair. "Not her. Take me, but not her." She had survived burying her husband. She had survived the whispers and the pity. But she would not survive watching her daughter drown. If you want to know what happens next, subscribe to my channel and follow Clara's story to the very end. Comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The water hit the wagon like a fist. One moment, Clara was wiping sweat from Josie's forehead, cursing the July heat that had turned the canvas cover into an oven. The next, the world tilted sideways, and she was scrambling to grab the seat rail as muddy water exploded through the canyon. "Hold on!" the driver shouted. Clara didn't see him go. She heard a splash, a single strangled cry, and then nothing but the roar of water and Josie's terrified screams. "It's okay, baby," Clara gasped, climbing onto the wagon seat as water swirled around her ankles. "Mama's got you. Mama's got you." But Mama didn't have anything. The wagon lurched, groaning as the current lifted it from the creek bed. Clara's skirts were soaked, dragging her down, and Josie was wailing so hard her little face had turned purple. The water rose to Clara's knees, then her waist. "Help!" Clara screamed, though she knew there was no one to hear. She'd been warned about traveling alone. She'd been warned about the summer storms that could turn a dry creek into a death trap in minutes. But she'd had no choice. Her sister was waiting. Her old life was gone, and staying in Missouri meant staying in the shadow of Thomas's grave, drowning in memories instead of water. Now she might drown in both. The wagon tipped. Clara fell against the side, barely keeping her grip on Josie. The baby's cries had turned to whimpers now, her tiny body shaking against Clara's chest. "I'm so sorry," Clara whispered. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have waited. I should have—" A voice cut through the roar. "Don't move!" Clara's head snapped up. Through the spray and the chaos, she saw him. A man on horseback, fighting his way down the slope toward the flooding creek. His hat was gone, his shirt plastered to his body, and he was driving his horse straight into the water, like a man with nothing left to lose. "The wagon's going!" Clara screamed. "It's going!" "I know!" he shouted back. "When I get close, you jump to me. You hear? You jump!" "I can't! My baby!" "I'll catch you both. Trust me." Trust him. A stranger. A man she'd never seen before in her life, asking her to leap into a flash flood with her daughter in her arms. Clara looked at the water rising around her, looked at Josie's face, so small, so scared. Looked at the man fighting the current to reach them. She didn't have a choice. The wagon groaned, tilting further. Clara could feel it starting to roll. The stranger was close now, 10 feet, maybe less, his arms outstretched, his face set with a determination that made something in Clara's chest crack open. "Now!" he yelled. "Jump! Now!" Clara jumped. For one terrible second, she was weightless, falling through spray and chaos with her baby clutched against her heart. Then strong arms caught her, pulled her close, and she was pressed against a solid chest as the wagon disappeared beneath the churning brown water behind them. "I've got you," the stranger said, his voice rough in her ear. "I've got you both." Clara couldn't speak, couldn't think, could only hold on to Josie and hold on to this man as he fought the current, dragging them toward shallower water. His horse had retreated to the bank and stood waiting, ears flat, as its master battled the flood with 2 extra lives in his arms. The current was brutal. Twice Clara felt them go under, felt water close over her head and fill her nose and mouth. Twice the stranger hauled them back up, his grip never loosening, his legs churning against the pull of the water. When Clara's feet finally touched solid ground, she collapsed. The stranger caught her before she could fall, easing her down onto the muddy bank, with Josie still tight in her arms. Clara lay there gasping, coughing up water, her whole body shaking so hard her teeth chattered despite the summer heat. "The baby," she managed. "Is she—" "She's breathing," the stranger said. He was kneeling beside her, water streaming from his clothes, checking Josie with hands that were surprisingly gentle for their size. "Crying's a good sign. Means her lungs are clear." As if to prove his point, Josie let out a wail that echoed off the canyon walls. Clara laughed. It came out as a sob, but it was still a laugh. "That's my girl," she whispered, pressing her lips to Josie's wet hair. "That's my brave girl." "Ma'am?" The stranger's voice was quiet now, careful. "Are you hurt anywhere?" Clara took stock. Her shoulder ached where she'd hit the wagon rail. Her hands were scraped raw from gripping the seat. But she was alive. Josie was alive. "No," she said. "I don't think so." The stranger nodded. He was older than she'd first thought, mid-30s maybe, with a face that had seen hard weather and harder years. There was a scar near his right eye, pale against sun-darkened skin, and his eyes were the gray of storm clouds. "I'm Samuel Brennan," he said. "Most folks call me Sam." "Clara," she managed. "Clara Sullivan. And this is Josephine. Josie." Sam's eyes softened slightly as he looked at the baby. "Pretty name for a pretty little one." He straightened, looking back at the still raging creek. "Your driver?" Clara's throat tightened. "Gone. The water took him before I could even—" She stopped, unable to finish. Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded once, his jaw tight. "I'm sorry." "I didn't even know his name," Clara whispered. "I hired him in Albuquerque. He said the crossing was safe." "It usually is." Sam's voice was flat. "Summer storms are unpredictable. Water can come down from the mountains without a cloud in sight overhead." He paused. "You were headed somewhere?" "My sister. In Ridgewater Springs." Sam's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's another 20 miles west." "I know." "Through Wade territory." Clara didn't know what that meant, but something in Sam's tone made her stomach tighten. "Is that a problem?" Sam didn't answer directly. Instead, he whistled sharply, and the chestnut horse that had been waiting on the bank picked its way carefully toward them. "My ranch is about 3 miles east," Sam said. "You and the little one need dry clothes, food, and rest. The creek won't be passable for a day or two, at least." Clara's first instinct was to refuse. She'd learned the hard way not to trust strange men, not to put herself in anyone's debt. But Josie was shivering in her arms, and Clara's legs felt like they might give out at any moment. "I can pay you for your trouble," she said. "I have money in my—" She stopped, realizing. Her bag, her trunk. Everything she owned was at the bottom of the flood. Sam seemed to read her face. "Don't worry about that now," he said. "Let's just get you both somewhere safe." He helped her onto his horse, with an ease that suggested he'd done this before. Lifted women and children to safety, like it was nothing special. Then he swung up behind her, one arm settling around her waist to keep her steady, the other taking the reins. Clara should have felt uncomfortable, pressed this close to a stranger. Instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. "Hold on to your little one," Sam said, his voice a low rumble near her ear. "The trail's rough, but Copper knows the way." Copper. The horse had a name. For some reason, that small detail made Clara's eyes sting with tears she didn't understand. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds Josie's occasional whimpers and the steady rhythm of the horse's hooves. The storm had moved on, leaving the air thick and heavy with moisture, but the worst of the rain had passed. "You're from back east," Sam said finally. It wasn't a question. "Missouri." "Long way to travel alone with a baby." Clara stiffened slightly. "I managed." "Didn't say you didn't." Sam's tone was mild, without judgment. "Just making conversation." Clara relaxed a fraction. "My husband died last winter," she said, surprising herself with the admission. "Scarlet fever. I was pregnant with Josie when he passed." Sam was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Everyone says that." The words came out more bitter than Clara intended. "They say they're sorry, and then they whisper about the widow who can't keep her farm. The widow who's a burden on the church. The widow who should just find herself another husband and stop being everyone's problem." "Is that why you left?" Clara thought about it, about the pitying looks, the helpful suggestions from married women about eligible bachelors, the way Thomas's family had started eyeing her small savings, her few belongings, as if calculating what they might be owed. "I left because there was nothing there for me anymore," she said quietly. "My sister's all the family I have now. She and her husband have a homestead in Ridgewater Springs. They said Josie and I could start fresh there." "Fresh starts are hard to come by out here," Sam said. "But they're possible." Something in his voice made Clara glance back at him. "You sound like you know something about that." Sam's face was unreadable. "I reckon we all do." They crested a small rise, and Clara caught her first glimpse of Sam's ranch. It was modest, but well-maintained. A sturdy cabin with a stone chimney, a large barn, and a corral where several horses grazed. Smoke curled from the chimney, despite the summer heat. "You have help?" Clara asked, surprised. "Esteban," Sam said. "He's been with me 6 years now. Knows more about ranching than I'll ever learn." As they approached, an older man emerged from the barn. He was small and wiry, with silver-streaked dark hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from leather by the sun. His eyes widened when he saw Clara and Josie. "Dios mío," he breathed. "What happened?" "Flash flood at Dry Creek Crossing," Sam said, dismounting carefully before helping Clara down. "Mrs. Sullivan and her baby got caught in it. The driver didn't make it." Esteban crossed himself quickly. "The poor señora and niña. Come inside, come inside." "I will make soup. Get blankets. Just dry clothes and somewhere to rest for now," Sam cut in gently. "They've been through enough." Clara found herself guided into the cabin by the older man's fussing hands. The interior was neat and simple. A large fireplace, sturdy furniture, a kitchen area that smelled faintly of coffee and beans. Not a woman's touch in sight, but clean, cared for. "You will take the patron's room," Esteban announced, already pulling blankets from a chest. "He will sleep out here. It is decided." "I couldn't possibly," Clara began. "You can and you will," Sam said from the doorway, his tone brooking no argument. "Esteban, see if we've got anything that might work as baby clothes. A clean shirt, maybe. Something soft. I know just the thing." Esteban disappeared into another room. Clara stood awkwardly in the middle of the cabin, dripping water onto the wooden floor, Josie fussing quietly against her shoulder. She felt suddenly, acutely aware of how she must look. Half-drowned, mud-streaked, holding a crying baby in a stranger's home. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "If you hadn't been there—" "Don't think about that." Sam's voice was quiet but firm. "You're here now. You're both safe. That's what matters." He moved to the fireplace, adding wood to the low flames despite the warmth of the day. "Water from a flood is cold," he explained without looking at her. "Gets into your bones. You'll want the heat." He was right. Clara hadn't realized she was still shivering until he said it. Esteban returned with a bundle of soft fabric, an old cotton shirt that would swamp Josie, but would be warm and dry. He also had a towel and a dress that clearly didn't belong to either man. "My sister's," Sam said, noticing Clara's questioning look. "She left some things here before she—" He stopped. "It should fit well enough." "Before she what?" Clara wanted to ask. But something in Sam's face stopped her. A shadow had crossed it, there and gone, leaving his expression carefully blank. "Thank you," Clara said instead. "Both of you." "The room's through there," Sam said, gesturing to a door. "Take your time. I'll see about warming some milk for the little one." Clara retreated to the bedroom, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Only then did she let herself breathe, let herself feel the full weight of what had happened, the terror, the loss, the miracle of a stranger appearing when all hope was gone. She changed out of her sodden clothes with trembling hands, dried Josie as best she could, and wrapped her daughter in the soft shirt that smelled faintly of cedar and something else, something masculine. When she caught her reflection in a small mirror on the wall, she almost didn't recognize herself. Her hair had come undone from its pins, hanging in wet tangles around a face that was paler than she'd ever seen it. Her eyes looked too big, too dark, haunted, but alive. "We're alive," she whispered to Josie, who had finally stopped crying and was now looking up at her with curious, exhausted eyes. "We made it, sweetheart." A soft knock came at the door. "Mrs. Sullivan?" Sam's voice. "I've got warm milk for the baby if you're ready." Clara smoothed her borrowed dress, tucked her wet hair behind her ears, and opened the door. Sam stood on the other side, holding a cup of milk that he'd clearly tested on his wrist. A motion so practiced, so natural, that Clara felt something shift in her chest. "You've done this before," she said without thinking. Sam's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "My sister had 2 little ones, before she passed." "I'm sorry," Clara said softly. "Don't be. It was years ago." He handed her the cup. "Tuberculosis. Took her quick, at least." There was a story there. Clara could feel it, a depth of loss that matched her own, hidden beneath the surface of quiet competence and careful distance. "Losing family never gets easier," she said, "no matter how much time passes." Sam's eyes met hers. For a moment, something raw flickered there. Recognition, understanding, the shared grief of people who knew what it meant to bury the ones they loved. "No," he agreed quietly. "It doesn't." Josie made a small sound of impatience, breaking the moment. Clara sat in a chair by the fire, helping her daughter drink the warm milk, while Sam busied himself hanging their wet clothes near the flames. "The creek should be passable in 2 days, maybe 3, he said, his back to her. "Depending on whether we get more rain." "And if we do?" "Then you stay until it's safe." Sam turned to face her. "I won't send you back out there until I know you'll make it." Clara should have argued, should have insisted on leaving as soon as possible, on not being a burden. But Josie was finally calm in her arms, warm and fed and alive, and Clara was so tired she could barely keep her eyes open. "Thank you," she said. It seemed inadequate for everything he'd done, but it was all she had. Sam nodded once. "Get some rest. Esteban's making stew for dinner. I'll wake you when it's ready." He left her then, closing the door softly behind him. Clara sat for a long moment, listening to the crackle of the fire and the low murmur of Spanish as Esteban and Sam talked in the other room. She thought about Thomas, about the life they'd planned together, the future that had been stolen by fever and circumstance, about the long, lonely months of grief that had followed, the weight of raising a child alone in a world that didn't know what to do with widows. And she thought about the man who had jumped into a flood to save 2 strangers, who had opened his home without hesitation, who tested milk on his wrist like he'd done it 100 times, who spoke of his dead sister with the same quiet devastation Clara felt for Thomas. Samuel Brennan was a stranger. She knew nothing about him except his name and his kindness. But something in Clara's heart, something she'd thought was dead and buried, was starting to wake up. She pushed the feeling down. This wasn't the time for that. Might never be the time for that. She was a widow with a baby, passing through a stranger's ranch on her way to her sister's homestead. nothing more. But as she laid Josie in a drawer Esteban had padded with blankets, as she stretched out on Sam Brennan's bed and let exhaustion pull her under, Clara couldn't shake the image of gray eyes in a storm-weathered face, and the way those eyes had softened when they looked at her daughter. Outside, Sam stood on his porch, staring at the darkening sky, where more clouds were gathering in the east. "Another storm coming," Esteban observed, joining him. "Tomorrow, maybe the next day." "I know." The old man was quiet for a moment. Then, "She is pretty, the widow. Strong, too. Survived what would have killed most." Sam said nothing. "It has been a long time since you had a woman under this roof, patron." "She's passing through," Sam said flatly. "Soon as the creek goes down, I'll take her to her sister." Esteban made a non-committal sound. "If that is what you wish, it's what needs to happen." "Si, si." The old man turned to go back inside, but paused at the door. "You know what my abuela used to say? That God doesn't send storms to destroy us. He sends them to show us where we need to be." Sam didn't respond. He stood on the porch until the first stars appeared, thinking about floods and fate and a woman who had clutched her baby like nothing else in the world mattered. Then he went inside to check that the fire was still burning. Clara woke to screaming. She was on her feet before her eyes fully opened, heart slamming against her ribs, reaching for Josie in the darkness. But Josie was still asleep in her makeshift cradle, undisturbed. The scream came again, not from the bedroom, from somewhere beyond the door. Clara grabbed the first thing she could find, a heavy candlestick from the dresser, and crept toward the sound. Her bare feet made no noise on the wooden floor as she eased the door open. Sam was thrashing on his pallet by the dying fire, caught in a nightmare that had him crying out words Clara couldn't understand. His face was twisted with an anguish she recognized too well. "No," he gasped. "No, don't! Rebecca!" Clara set down the candlestick. She knew better than to touch a man in the grip of night terrors. Thomas had warned her once about soldiers he'd known, men who woke swinging at shadows. But she couldn't just stand there watching him suffer. "Sam," she kept her voice soft but clear. "Sam, wake up. You're dreaming." He didn't hear her. His hands were clenched in the blankets, knuckles white, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool night air. "Sam," louder now. "It's Clara. You're safe. Wake up." His eyes flew open. For one terrible moment, he looked at her without seeing, his gaze wild, unfocused, somewhere far away. Then recognition flooded in, and with it, shame. "Mrs. Sullivan." He sat up abruptly, wiping his face with a shaking hand. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't. Josie's still asleep." Clara hesitated, then sat in the chair nearest his pallet. "Bad dream?" Sam laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You could say that." Clara waited. She'd learned that sometimes the kindest thing you could do was just be present. Let the silence stretch until the other person was ready to fill it. Sam stared at the embers for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Her name was Rebecca. We were supposed to get married when I came home from the war. The woman you called for just now." Sam nodded slowly. "There was a fire. The barn caught first, then spread to the house. She was trying to save the horses when the roof came down." He paused. "I was 200 miles away, fighting for a cause I barely understood anymore. By the time I got word, she'd been in the ground for a month." Clara's chest ached. "I'm so sorry." "Wasn't your fault." Sam's jaw tightened. "Wasn't anybody's fault except the drunk fool who knocked over a lantern and ran instead of helping put out the flames." "Did they catch him?" "Eventually." Spent 3 years in prison. Sam's voice went flat. I told myself that was justice, that it was enough. But it wasn't. It's never enough, is it? Clara thought about Thomas, about the fever that had taken him so quickly there'd barely been time to say goodbye, about the rage she'd felt at God, at fate, at the whole unfair world.
"No," she said quietly. "It's never enough."
They sat together in the darkness, two strangers bound by grief, until the first gray light of dawn crept through the windows. The next morning, Clara insisted on making herself useful. "You're a guest," Esteban protested, as she tied an apron around her borrowed dress. "Guests do not cook and clean."
"Guests don't eat a rancher out of house and home for free, either."
Clara checked the wood supply by the stove.
"I may have lost everything in that flood, Mr. Fuentes, but I haven't lost my pride. I'll earn my keep while I'm here."
Esteban's weathered face creased into something that might have been approval. "You are stubborn, Señora."
"I've been called worse."
"See, I imagine you have." He handed her a basket. "There are eggs in the henhouse. If you insist on working, you can start there." Clara took the basket and stepped outside into the early morning heat. The summer sun was already fierce, promising another scorching day. She found the henhouse easily enough, grateful for the simple task that let her mind wander. She'd been at Sam's ranch for 2 days now. The creek remained dangerously high, and Esteban's daily reports confirmed there would be no safe crossing for at least another day or two. Part of her was anxious to reach her sister. Abby would be worried sick by now. But another part, a part Clara didn't want to examine too closely, wasn't entirely sorry for the delay. Sam had barely spoken to her since that night by the fire. He rose before dawn, worked until dark, and avoided her eyes at meals. Clara understood. She'd seen too much. He was embarrassed, maybe ashamed. Men like Sam Brennan didn't show weakness willingly. But she couldn't forget the sound of his voice, crying out in the darkness, the naked grief on his face when he spoke Rebecca's name. She gathered the eggs carefully, her thoughts a jumble of the past and present. When she returned to the cabin, she found Esteban at the kitchen table, whittling a small piece of wood, while Josie watched from a blanket spread on the floor. "She has been very good," Esteban reported. "Not a single cry. She watched me work and smiled like she understood everything." Clara laughed despite herself. "She's always been an easy baby, even when—" She stopped, the familiar weight settling in her chest. "Even when her father died?" Esteban's voice was gentle. "It is all right, Señora. The patron told me what you shared with him." Clara set the eggs on the counter, not trusting herself to speak. "You have suffered much," Esteban continued. "To lose a husband so young, to raise a child alone, to travel across dangerous countries seeking a new beginning. These things take courage. Or desperation. Perhaps they are the same thing, no?" Esteban held up the piece he'd been carving, a small wooden horse, delicate and perfectly formed. "For la niña, when she is bigger. Something to remember this place by." Clara's throat tightened. "You're very kind, Mr. Fuentes." "Esteban, please." He set the horse aside and fixed her with a shrewd gaze. "May I say something, Señora? Something perhaps too personal for such short acquaintance?" Clara nodded warily. "The patron is a good man, the best I have known in 62 years of living. But he has been alone too long. He builds walls around his heart higher than the mountains, and he believes this protects him." Esteban paused. "It does not. It only makes him lonely." "Why are you telling me this?" Esteban smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. "Because I am old, and old men see things that younger eyes miss. I see how he looks at you when you are tending to your little one.
like you were something precious, something he lost once and never thought to find again. Clara's face grew hot. I'm just passing through. Soon as the creek goes down. See. You will go to your sister.
This I understand. Esteban picked up his whittling knife again. But sometimes, Señora, the place we are passing through becomes the place we are meant to stay. Before Clara could respond, the cabin door opened and Sam stepped inside, bringing with him the smell of horses and hard work. Esteban, the fence line on the south pasture needs... He stopped when he saw Clara, something flickering across his face too quickly to read. Mrs. Sullivan, I hope you slept well. Well enough, thank you. Clara busied herself with the eggs, suddenly awkward. I'm making breakfast. Scrambled eggs, if that suits. You don't have to. I want to. She met his eyes firmly. I won't be a burden on your hospitality, Mr. Brennan. Something shifted in Sam's expression. Sam, he said quietly, please. Clara felt Esteban watching them both with barely concealed interest. Sam, then. Now sit down and tell me where you keep the coffee. Breakfast was a strange, charged affair. Sam ate quickly, barely tasting the food, while Clara tried not to notice how his presence seemed to fill the small cabin. Esteban kept up a steady stream of chatter about the weather, the cattle, the state of the range after the floods, but his eyes darted between Sam and Clara with knowing amusement. Josie, oblivious to the tension, played happily on her blanket, occasionally making sounds that drew reluctant smiles from everyone. She's starting to crawl, Clara observed, watching her daughter rock on hands and knees. Any day now. She is strong, Esteban said, like her mother. Sam pushed back from the table abruptly. I should get back to work. Thank you for breakfast, Mrs. He caught himself. Clara. He was gone before she could respond, the door swinging shut behind him. Clara stared after him, confused by the hollow feeling in her chest. He is afraid, Esteban said softly. Of what? The old man's smile was sad. Of you, Señora. Of what you make him feel. It has been many years since anyone has cracked those walls of his. He does not know what to do. That afternoon, Clara found herself unable to settle. The cabin felt too small, the heat too oppressive. Josie napped fitfully, her little face flushed despite the wet cloth Clara had laid across her forehead. She stepped onto the porch for air and found Sam there, leaning against the rail with his back to her. Esteban says you were in the war, Clara said, before she could think better of it. Sam's shoulders tensed. Most men my age were. My brother wasn't. He paid someone to take his place. Clara moved to stand beside him, looking out at the sun-baked ranch yard. My father said it was the practical choice, that someone had to stay and run the farm. Your brother was lucky. Was he? Clara thought about David, about the man he'd become after the war, bitter, paranoid, drowning his guilt in whiskey. He never forgave himself. Even though he didn't fire a single shot, he felt like he'd killed every man who died in his place. Sam was quiet for a long moment. I used to think the ones who stayed home were cowards, that they'd missed something important, something that would have made men of them. He laughed, a harsh sound. Now I think they were the smart ones. War doesn't make men. It breaks them. Just takes some of us longer to realize it. Clara studied his profile, the hard line of his jaw, the distant look in his gray eyes. You don't seem broken to me. That's because you don't know me. Maybe I'd like to. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither of them had intended. Sam turned to look at her, and Clara saw the conflict in his face, the wanting and the fear, all tangled up together. Clara. Sam! Esteban's voice cut through the moment,
urgent and alarmed. "Riders coming! From the east!" Sam's expression shifted instantly, the vulnerability replaced by hard alertness.
He moved past Clara, one hand dropping to the revolver at his hip. "Get inside," he said. "Take Josie, and don't come out until I tell you."
"Who is it? Just do it, please."
There was something in his voice that made Clara obey without argument. She retreated into the cabin, gathered a still sleeping Josie from her cradle, and moved to the window where she could watch without being seen. 3 riders approached the ranch at a leisurely pace. The man in the lead was young, maybe 25, with the kind of handsome face that knew it was handsome. He sat his horse with arrogant ease, a rifle resting across his saddle. "Brennan," the young man called as they reined in. "Been a while." "Not long enough, Marcus." Sam's voice was flat. "What do you want?" "Just being neighborly. Word is you pulled some folks out of the flood a few days back. A woman and a baby." Clara's blood ran cold. "News travels fast," Sam said. "Small territory." The young man, Marcus, smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "My father was concerned. Wanted to make sure the lady and her child were being properly cared for." "They're fine." "Glad to hear it. Though it does seem strange. A woman traveling alone with a baby? No husband? No family to speak of?" "Her family's in Ridgewater Springs. She's passing through." Marcus nodded slowly, his gaze drifting toward the cabin windows. Clara pulled back instinctively, her arms tightening around Josie. "Ridgewater Springs," Marcus repeated. "That's interesting. We've got family out that way ourselves. Cousin Gordon. He's been having some trouble with the folks there. Stubborn types who don't understand how things work in this territory." "I wouldn't know anything about that." "No?" Marcus's smile sharpened. "Well, if you do happen to know anyone heading that direction, you might want to warn them. Things are about to change in Ridgewater Springs. People who don't adapt tend to have accidents." "Is that a threat, Marcus?" "Just friendly advice from one neighbor to another." Marcus gathered his reins, his horse dancing impatiently. "Give our regards to your house guest, and tell her my father would be happy to offer his hospitality if she finds your accommodations lacking. The Wade Ranch has much more to offer a lady of quality." He wheeled his horse and rode off, his companions following. Sam didn't move until they were well out of sight. When he finally came inside, his face was grim. "Who is that?" Clara demanded. "And how did they know I was here?" "Marcus Wade. His father owns the biggest spread in the territory." Sam closed the door, leaning against it heavily. As for how they knew, nothing happens around here without the Wades finding out. They've got eyes and ears everywhere. What did he mean about Ridgewater Springs? About things changing? Sam hesitated, and Clara saw him weighing how much to tell her. "Don't protect me," she said sharply. "If my sister's in danger, I have a right to know."
"The Wades have been buying up land throughout the county. Anyone who won't sell faces pressure. Delayed supplies, damaged property, worse. Your sister's homestead sits on one of the best water sources in the region. Her husband's been refusing their offers for months." Clara sank into a chair, Josie squirming in her arms. "Abby mentioned trouble in her letters. A neighbor who kept pushing them to sell. I never thought—" "That neighbor is Gordon Cobb, Cornelius Wade's cousin."
Sam knelt before her, his eyes intent. "Listen to me, Clara. The Wades are dangerous. I've seen what they do to people who get in their way. You showing up here, heading to your sister's homestead? It's put a target on all of you. Then I should leave, right now, before I make things worse. You can't. The creek's still too high, and even if it weren't, riding out there alone would be suicide." Sam took her hands, his grip warm and strong. "We'll figure this out together. I'll take you to your sister as soon as it's safe, and we'll face whatever comes. But you have to trust me." Clara looked into his gray eyes and saw nothing but sincerity.
I trust you, she said quietly. I don't know why, after everything, but I do. Sam nodded once. Then he released her hands and stood, the mask of careful distance sliding back into place. Esteban's checking the creek now. With luck, we can leave tomorrow at first light. But tonight, we stay alert. The Wades don't always announce their visits. That night, sleep refused to come. Clara lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the occasional whinny from the corral, the creak of the cabin settling. Josie slept peacefully beside her, unaware of the danger that had found them. Around midnight, Clara heard movement in the main room. She slipped out of bed and opened the door to find Sam sitting at the table, cleaning his rifle by lamplight. "You should be resting," she said. "Could say the same to you." Clara sat across from him, watching his hands move with practiced efficiency over the weapon. "Will they come tonight?" "Probably not. The Wades like to play games, let people stew in their fear before making a real move." Sam set down the rifle. "But I'd rather be ready than sorry." "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "That woman Marcus mentioned, the one with them, who is she?" Sam's jaw tightened. "Vera Wade, Marcus's mother, Cornelius's second wife. She's the one who really runs things, though most folks don't realize it. Cornelius has the name and the money, but Vera has the teeth." Clara thought about the hard-faced woman she'd glimpsed from the window. "She frightens you. She's smart and ruthless and patient. That's a dangerous combination." Sam met her eyes. "But I'm not scared for myself, Clara. I'm scared for you, for your sister, for anyone caught between the Wades and what they want." Something in his voice made Clara's heart ache. "You could have turned me away," she said softly. "When you pulled us from that flood, you could have taken us to town and washed your hands of us. Why didn't you?" Sam was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Because when I saw you standing on that wagon, holding your baby like nothing else mattered, I saw Rebecca. Not her face, you don't look anything alike, but the way you held on, the way you fought, the way you refused to give up even when everything was against you." He swallowed hard. "I couldn't save her. I've lived with that for 10 years. But I could save you. And I knew if I didn't try, I'd never be able to live with myself." Clara reached across the table and took his hand. "You did save us," she said. "You're still saving us. And whatever happens next, I want you to know I'm grateful. Not just for pulling us from the water, for everything since. For being kind when you didn't have to be. For giving us shelter. For treating Josie like she matters." Sam's fingers tightened around hers. "She does matter. You both do." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. "Sam." "Don't." His voice was strained. "Don't say anything else. Not tonight. If you do, I might—" He stopped, visibly struggling. "Might what?" He looked at her then, and Clara saw everything he was trying to hide. The loneliness, the longing, the desperate hope he'd been fighting since the moment they met. "I might ask you to stay," he said roughly. "And that wouldn't be fair. Not to you. Not when you've got family waiting. Not when you're still grieving your husband. Not when I've got nothing to offer but a broken-down ranch and a broken-down heart." Clara's eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. "You're not broken," she whispered. "Wounded, maybe, but not broken. There's a difference." Sam shook his head slowly. "You see more than you should." "Maybe I see exactly what's there." The silence stretched between them, filled with everything they couldn't say. Finally, Sam pulled his hand away and picked up his rifle again. "Get some sleep," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to push past the walls he was rebuilding between them. But she could see the fear in his eyes, not of the Wades, but of something far more dangerous. Of hope. Of the possibility that he might love again and lose again. She understood that fear. She carried it herself. "Good night, Sam," she said softly, and retreated to her room. But sleep was a long time coming, and when it finally arrived, she dreamed of gray eyes and strong hands, and a voice calling her name through rising water.
Dawn broke clear and hot, the summer sun promising another scorching day.
Clara woke to the sound of voices outside, Sam and Esteban, talking in low, urgent tones. She dressed quickly, checked on Josie, and stepped onto the porch. Both men turned at her approach, their faces grim. "What is it?" Clara asked. "Creek's down enough to cross," Sam said, "but there's a problem." Esteban stepped forward. "I rode out early to check the ford. There are men camped near the crossing. Wade men. They're watching the road to Ridgewater Springs." Clara's stomach dropped. "They're waiting for us." "Looks that way." Sam's jaw was set. "We can't take the main road. They'd see us coming from a mile away." "Is there another way?" Sam and Esteban exchanged a glance. "There's an old trail through the high country," Sam said slowly. "Apache territory. It's rough going, but it would bring us to Ridgewater Springs from the north, avoiding the main road entirely."
"How long?" "If we push hard, we could make it by nightfall. But it won't be easy, especially with a baby." Clara thought about Marcus Wade's cold smile, about the threat in his voice when he spoke of accidents. "We'll manage," she said firmly. "Whatever it takes." Sam studied her for a long moment, something like admiration flickering in his eyes. "All right then. Esteban, pack provisions for 2 days, just in case." He turned to Clara. "Get your things together. We leave in an hour." Clara hurried back inside, her mind racing. She gathered the few belongings she'd accumulated during her stay, the borrowed dress, the soft blanket for Josie, the small wooden horse Esteban had carved. Everything else she owned was gone, lost to the flood. But it didn't matter. All that mattered was getting Josie to safety, getting to Abby, figuring out what came next. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a question she refused to examine too closely. What would happen to her and Sam once this journey was over? An hour later, they were ready to ride. Sam helped Clara onto a gentle mare, then lifted Josie up to her. The baby settled into her arms easily, seemingly content with the adventure. Clara suspected she was too young to understand the danger. A small mercy. "Remember," Esteban said, handing up a saddlebag packed with food and water. "The Apache Trail forks at the Red Rocks. Take the left path. Always the left. The right leads into canyon country. Very bad for horses." "We'll remember." Sam swung onto his own horse, a powerful black gelding that stamped impatiently. "Keep watch while we're gone. If anyone comes asking questions—" "I saw nothing. I know nothing." Esteban's weathered face creased into a smile. "I am just a foolish old man who cannot remember his own name." Sam reached down and clasped the old man's shoulder. "Thank you, my friend. Go with God, Patron, and bring yourself back safe." Esteban's eyes flickered to Clara. "Both of you." They rode out as the sun cleared the eastern mountains, climbing into the rugged hills that bordered Wade territory. Clara kept her eyes forward, her arms tight around Josie, her heart beating fast with a mixture of fear and something else. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Behind them, the ranch grew smaller and smaller until it vanished from sight. Ahead, the Apache Trail wound upward into the unknown. And somewhere to the west, Clara's sister was waiting, unaware that everything was about to change.
The Apache Trail tested every ounce of strength Clara had left. Josie had started fussing an hour into the climb, the heat and the rough riding wearing on her tiny body. Clara sang softly, rocked her as best she could while staying in the saddle, but nothing seemed to help. "We need to stop," Sam called back, reining in his horse.
She needs water. So do you. I'm fine. You're pale as milk and swaying in your saddle. Sam dismounted and moved to help her down. 5 minutes won't make a difference. Clara wanted to argue, but her legs nearly buckled when her feet touched the ground. Sam caught her elbow, steadying her. "When did you last eat?" he demanded. "This morning, before we left." That was 6 hours ago. He guided her to a flat rock and pressed a canteen into her hands. "Drink, then eat something. I won't have you passing out on me halfway up this mountain." Clara drank, the water warm but welcome. Josie grabbed at the canteen with eager hands, and Clara helped her take small sips. "She's a fighter," Sam observed, watching the baby drink. "Like her mother." "She gets that from her father, actually." Clara smiled despite her exhaustion. "Thomas never knew when to quit. Even at the end, when the fever was taking him, he kept trying to get out of bed, kept saying he had things to do, people counting on him." Sam was quiet for a moment. "He sounds like a good man." "He was the best man I ever knew." Clara paused, then looked up at Sam. "Until now." Something flickered in Sam's eyes. Hope, fear, longing, all tangled together. He opened his mouth to respond. A gunshot cracked through the air. Sam had Clara on the ground before she could scream, his body shielding her and Josie as rock fragments exploded above their heads. "Stay down," he hissed, drawing his revolver. "Where did that come from?" "The ridge. Someone's got the high ground." Another shot rang out, closer this time. "They're trying to pin us down." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. Josie had gone silent, her eyes wide with terror. "What do we do?" Sam scanned their surroundings quickly. "There's cover about 20 yards to the left. When I start shooting, you run. Don't look back, don't stop, just run." "I'm not leaving you." "Clara, I said no." Her voice was fierce despite her fear. "We go together or not at all." Sam stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Together then. On my count." He fired 3 shots toward the ridge in rapid succession. Clara scrambled to her feet, clutching Josie tight, and ran. Sam was right behind her, firing as he moved, driving them toward the rocky outcrop that offered their only protection. They made it just as another bullet whined past Clara's ear. "You all right?" Sam pressed her against the rock, his body still between her and the shooter. "Yes. Josie?" The baby let out a wail, and Clara almost laughed with relief. Crying meant breathing. "They've got us pinned," Sam said grimly, reloading his revolver. "If there's more than one, we're in trouble." "Can you see them?" Sam risked a glance around the rock. Another shot sent him ducking back. "2 that I can make out. Maybe more." Clara's mind raced. "The horses?" "Scattered when the shooting started. Thunder will come back when things calm down, but your mare might be halfway to Mexico by now." "So we're trapped." "For the moment." Sam's jaw tightened. "But they can't stay up there forever. Sun will be down in a few hours. If we can hold out until dark—" "Sam Brennan," a voice called from the ridge. "We just want to talk." Sam's expression went cold. "That's Fletcher Cobb, Gordon's brother." "The one who does the Wade's dirty work?" "The same." Sam raised his voice. "Talk doesn't usually involve bullets, Cobb." Laughter echoed down from above. "Just getting your attention. Come on out. Nobody else needs to get hurt." "What do you want?" "The woman. Wade's got questions for her. About her family in Ridgewater Springs. About what she knows."
Clara's blood turned to ice. "She doesn't know anything," Sam shouted. "She's just passing through." "Then she won't mind answering a few questions. Send her up, and you can ride out of here free and clear."
Our quarrel ain't with you, Brennan.
Sam looked at Clara. "Stay here. Don't move." "Sam, you can't—" "Trust me." He stepped out from behind the rock, hands raised, revolver dangling from one finger. "All right, Cobb. You want to talk? Let's talk. Man to man. No need for the woman to be involved." A long pause. Then, "Come on up, slow and easy." Clara watched in horror as Sam began climbing toward the ridge. Every instinct screamed at her to stop him, to pull him back, but she knew that would only get them both killed. She pressed her face against Josie's hair and prayed. The minutes stretched like hours. Clara strained to hear voices from above, but caught only fragments. Sam's low rumble, Cobb's harsh laughter, other voices she didn't recognize. Then a scuffle, a shout, a gunshot. "Sam!" Clara screamed. Silence. She waited, every muscle tense, Josie whimpering against her chest. She should run. She knew she should run. But her legs wouldn't move. Footsteps on the rocks above. Clara pressed back against the outcrop, searching for a weapon, anything. Sam appeared around the boulder, blood streaming from a cut above his eye, but very much alive. Clara threw herself at him. Josie squashed between them, sobbing with relief. "You're okay. You're okay. I thought—" "I'm fine." Sam held her close, his breath ragged. "Cobb and his boys are dealt with." Clara pulled back, searching his face. "Dealt with?" "They won't be following us." Sam's expression was hard, unreadable. "That's all you need to know." Clara understood. She didn't ask for details. "Can you ride?" Sam asked, already moving to whistle for his horse. "Yes." "Then we need to move. Where there's 2 of Cobb's men, there's usually more. And I don't want to be here when they come looking." They found Clara's mare grazing half a mile down the trail, spooked but uninjured. Sam helped Clara mount, his hands lingering at her waist. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I shouldn't have brought you this way. Should have known they'd have men watching the back trails, too." "You couldn't have known." "I should have." His voice was bitter. "The Wades think of everything. Always have." Clara reached down and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his bruised cheek. "You saved us. Again. Stop apologizing for that." Sam caught her hand and pressed his lips to her palm. The gesture was so tender, so unexpected, that Clara's breath caught in her throat. Then he released her and swung onto his own horse. "Let's go. We've got ground to cover before dark." They pushed hard through the remaining daylight, finally emerging from the high country as the sun began its descent. Clara's first glimpse of Ridgewater Springs stole her breath, not because it was beautiful, but because it meant they'd made it. There, Sam pointed to a homestead set apart from the main cluster of buildings. "That's your sister's place, according to the directions she sent." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I never thought I'd see it." "You're tougher than you think, Clara Sullivan." They rode down the hill, and before they'd covered half the distance, a woman came running from the house, skirts flying, arms waving. "Clara! Clara!" Clara was off her horse before it fully stopped, and then Abby was there, and the sisters were holding each other and crying and laughing all at once. "I thought you were dead," Abby sobbed. "When you didn't arrive, when we heard about the flood—" "I'm here. I'm fine. We're both fine." Clara held up Josie, who seemed bewildered by all the excitement. "Look at her, Abby. She's gotten so big." Abby took her niece with trembling hands. "She's beautiful. Oh, Clara, she's so beautiful." A man emerged from the workshop beside the house, wiping his hands on a leather apron. tall and broad-shouldered, with a kind face and intelligent eyes. "You must be Henry," Clara said, stepping forward.
"And you must be the sister my wife hasn't stopped worrying about for 3 days." Henry pulled her into a hug that surprised her with its warmth. "Welcome to Ridgewater Springs, such as it is." Clara turned to introduce Sam, but he'd hung back, still mounted, watching the reunion with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Sam, come meet my family." He dismounted slowly and approached, hat in hand. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, it's an honor." Abby's eyes went wide as she took in Sam's appearance, the blood still drying on his face, the dust-covered clothes, the revolver at his hip. "This is the man who saved us," Clara said quickly. "Samuel Brennan. He pulled Josie and me from the flood. He's been protecting us ever since." Henry stepped forward immediately, hand extended. "Then we owe you a debt we can never repay, Mr. Brennan." "No debt," Sam said, shaking the offered hand. "Anyone would have done the same." Clara caught his eye. "If you say that one more time, I might have to argue with you." The ghost of a smile crossed Sam's face. "Come inside, both of you," Abby insisted. "You look exhausted, and you," she pointed at Sam's injured forehead, "need that cut looked at. I won't take no for an answer." The evening that followed was unlike anything Clara had experienced in months. The warmth of Abby's home, the smell of good food cooking, the sound of family conversation, it all washed over her like healing rain. Abby cleaned and bandaged Sam's wound, while Clara fed Josie and settled her in a cradle that Henry had built months ago in anticipation of their arrival. "She sleeps through anything now," Clara said, watching her daughter drift off. "After everything she's been through, a little noise doesn't faze her." "She's had to grow up fast," Abby observed quietly. "Just like her mother." The sisters shared a look that needed no words. Over dinner, Sam and Henry discussed the situation with the Wades, the pressure to sell, the veiled threats, the strange accidents that had befallen those who refused. "Gordon Cobb was here just yesterday," Henry said grimly. "Third time this month. He's getting more aggressive." "He won't be coming back for a while," Sam said. "I had a conversation with his brother today. Persuaded him that the Whitmores aren't worth the trouble." Henry's eyebrows rose. "What kind of persuasion?" "The permanent kind." A heavy silence fell over the table. "The Wades won't take that lightly," Henry said finally. "Fletcher Cobb was one of their best men." "I know, which is why we need to be ready for what comes next." Sam leaned forward. "The Wades have been picking off ranchers and homesteaders one by one because nobody's willing to stand together. That has to change." "You think people will unite against the most powerful family in the territory?" "I think they're tired of living in fear." "And I think if someone gives them a reason to fight, they will." Henry and Sam talked late into the night, planning, strategizing, building a list of families who might be willing to stand against the Wade machine. Clara listened from her chair by the fire, Josie asleep in her arms, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. When the men finally exhausted themselves, Henry showed Sam to a small room above the workshop, while Abby led Clara to the bedroom that had been prepared for her. "He loves you, you know," Abby said as Clara settled Josie into her cradle. Clara's hands stilled. "We barely know each other." "Sometimes that doesn't matter." Abby sat on the edge of the bed. "I knew I loved Henry 2 weeks after we met. Everyone said I was crazy. My father nearly disowned me for marrying a blacksmith instead of the banker's son he'd chosen. But I knew. When you know, you know." "It's only been days, Abby, and I'm still grieving Thomas?" Abby took her sister's hands. "Clara, you'll always grieve him. He was your husband, the father of your child. But grief doesn't mean you stop living.
Thomas wouldn't have wanted that for you." Clara's eyes burned with tears she'd been holding back for hours. "I feel like I'm betraying him." "You're not. You're honoring him by going on, by finding happiness again." Abby squeezed her hands. "That man out there rode through a flash flood and then fought off hired guns to keep you safe. He looks at you like you're the only woman in the world. And I've seen how you look at him too, sister. Don't throw that away because you're scared." Long after Abby left, Clara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought about Thomas, about the life they'd built together and the future they'd planned. About the night he died, holding her hand, whispering that he loved her and that she had to be strong for their baby. She thought about Sam,
About gray eyes and gentle hands, and a voice that made her feel safe even in the midst of chaos. And she thought about what Abby had said. When you know, you know. Clara rose quietly, checked that Josie was sleeping soundly, and slipped out of the room. The workshop was dark, except for a single lamp burning in the window above. Clara climbed the narrow stairs and knocked softly on the door. "Sam?" The door opened. Sam stood there in his shirt sleeves, his hair damp from washing, his face still bearing the marks of the day's violence. "Clara, is everything all right? Is Josie—" "She's fine. Sleeping." Clara took a breath. "Can I come in?" Sam hesitated, then stepped back to let her enter. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a single chair. Sam had hung his gun belt on a hook by the door, his rifle leaning against the wall nearby. "You should be resting," he said. "Tomorrow, I need to tell you something." Sam went still, waiting. Clara gathered her courage. She'd spent so long protecting her heart, building walls to keep the pain out. But walls also kept other things out, things like love and connection, and the possibility of a future worth living. "When Thomas died," she began slowly, "I thought my life was over. Not just our life together, but my life. Everything I'd hoped for, everything I'd dreamed about, it all died with him. For months, I just went through the motions, getting up, taking care of Josie, eating, sleeping. But I wasn't really alive. I was just existing." Sam didn't speak, but his eyes never left her face. "Then the flood happened, and you came charging down that hill on your horse like some kind of avenging angel, and you pulled us out of the water. And for the first time since Thomas died, I felt something. I felt alive." "Clara, let me finish, please." She stepped closer to him. "I know it's too soon. I know I'm still grieving. I know we barely know each other, and there's danger all around us, and 100 reasons why this is a terrible idea. But I also know that when I'm with you, I don't feel broken anymore. I feel like maybe, just maybe, there's something worth living for beyond just surviving." Sam's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I don't want you to go back to your ranch when this is over. I'm saying that whatever happens with the Wades, whatever comes next, I want to face it together." Clara reached up and touched his face. "I'm saying that I think I'm falling in love with you, Sam Brennan, and it terrifies me, but not as much as the thought of losing you." Sam stood frozen for a long moment. Then something in him seemed to break open. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was hungry and desperate and filled with all the longing they'd both been fighting since the moment they met. Clara melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, her body pressed against his like she could somehow get closer, closer, never close enough. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "I've been trying so hard not to feel this," he whispered, "telling myself you were just passing through, that you deserved better than a broken-down rancher with nightmares and enemies and nothing to offer but trouble. I don't want better.
I want you. Clara. His voice cracked on her name. I lost Rebecca because I wasn't there to protect her. I swore I'd never put myself in a position to lose someone like that again. But then you came along, and all my walls came crashing down, and He stopped, struggling. I can't lose you. I can't. Then don't. Clara pulled back to look into his eyes. Fight for us. Fight for this. I know the Wades are dangerous. I know there's no guarantee we'll all survive what's coming.
But I'd rather have a few weeks of loving you than a lifetime of wondering what might have been. Sam's answer was another kiss, softer this time, sweeter. A promise. They held each other until the lamp burned low, talking in whispers about everything and nothing, their pasts, their fears, their hopes for a future neither had dared imagine. Finally, reluctantly, Clara pulled away. I should go back, before Abby sends a search party. Sam nodded, but he didn't release her hand. Tomorrow we start gathering allies. It's going to be dangerous. I know. The Wades won't stop until they've taken everything, or we've stopped them. I know that too. Sam brought her hand to his lips. Whatever happens, Clara Sullivan, you've given me something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope. Clara smiled, her heart full to bursting. The feeling is mutual, Sam Brennan. She slipped out of the workshop and back to the house, her feet barely touching the ground. For the first time since Thomas died, the future didn't feel like an empty void stretching endlessly before her. It felt like possibility. But as she climbed into bed beside Josie's cradle, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something dark. Something inevitable. Outside, the summer stars blazed overhead, indifferent to the struggles of the people below. And somewhere to the east, on a ranch that overlooked half the territory, Cornelius Wade was listening to reports of his men's failure. His face showed no emotion as he heard about Fletcher Cobb's fate. But his eyes, cold, calculating, patient, those eyes held the promise of retribution. The storm was gathering, and this time, there would be no escaping it. 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Sam and Henry rode out each morning to meet with other ranchers and homesteaders, building alliances, laying groundwork for resistance. Clara spent her days helping Abby with household tasks and caring for Josie. But her nights were spent with Sam, stolen hours in the workshop room, or walking under the stars. Each morning she woke with a smile. Each night she fell asleep in his arms. But the danger didn't sleep. On the 4th morning, a rider came galloping up to the homestead, his horse lathered with sweat. "Brennan!" he shouted. "Town meeting tonight! The Wades are making their move!" Sam emerged from the workshop, Clara right behind him. "What move?" Sam demanded. "Cornelius Wade himself is coming to Ridgewater Springs. Says he's got a proposal that'll settle everything once and for all." Clara's blood ran cold. "It's a trap," she said. "It has to be." "Probably," Sam agreed. "But we can't ignore it. If Wade's coming out in the open, it means he's confident. That's either very good or very bad for us." "What do we do?" Sam looked at Henry, who had joined them. "We go. All of us. Every rancher and homesteader who's stood with us. We show Wade that we're not afraid." "And if it goes wrong?" Sam's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure it costs him." That evening, as they prepared to ride into town, Clara pulled Sam aside. "Be careful," she whispered. "Please." "I will." He kissed her forehead. "Stay close to Henry. If anything happens, nothing's going to happen." Clara forced conviction into her voice. "We're going to stand together, just like you said. And we're going to win."
Sam looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes. Then he nodded. "Together," he said. "Together." They rode into Ridgewater Springs as the sun went down. A group of nearly 20 ranchers and homesteaders united for the first time against the Wade machine. The town hall was already crowded when they arrived, and at the front, flanked by his son Marcus and a half-dozen armed men, sat Cornelius Wade. His eyes found Clara the moment she walked through the door, and he smiled. Clara felt Sam's hand tighten around hers as Wade's smile cut through the crowded room. "Steady," Sam murmured. "Don't let him see you're afraid." "I'm not afraid." It was almost true. "I'm angry." The town hall buzzed with tension as more people filed in. Clara recognized some faces from her brief time in Ridgewater Springs. The general store owner, the doctor's wife, a handful of ranchers who'd been meeting with Sam and Henry. They nodded grimly as they passed, taking positions throughout the room, like soldiers preparing for battle. The mayor, a nervous little man with thinning hair and a perpetual sweat stain on his collar, called the meeting to order. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. Mr. Wade has requested this opportunity to address the community regarding ongoing concerns about land and water management in our territory." "Ongoing concerns," Henry muttered beside Clara. "That's a fancy way of saying theft and intimidation." Wade rose from his seat, and the room fell silent. He was an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and a face that might have been handsome before it hardened into cruelty. "Friends and neighbors," he began, his voice smooth as oil. "I know there have been misunderstandings between us, harsh words spoken, regrettable incidents." "Regrettable incidents?" A rancher near the back stood up. "Your men burned my barn last month, nearly killed my horses." Wade held up a hand. "And for that, I am truly sorry. Things have gotten out of hand, which is why I'm here tonight, to make amends." Clara watched him carefully. Every word, every gesture was calculated. This wasn't a man seeking peace. This was a predator circling his prey. "I'm prepared to offer fair market value for any property that borders my land," Wade continued. "Additionally, I'll guarantee water access rights to all remaining homesteaders for the next 10 years. No restrictions, no interference." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some sounded interested, others skeptical. "And in return?" Sam's voice cut through the noise. "What do you want?" Wade's eyes found Sam, and something cold flickered there. "Mr. Brennan, I heard you'd taken an interest in our little community. Shame about Fletcher Cobb. He was a good man. He was a killer who ambushed innocent travelers. He was following orders. My orders, I'll admit freely." Wade spread his hands. "But that's the past. I'm talking about the future now. A future where we can all prosper together." "You didn't answer my question." Sam stepped forward, positioning himself between Wade and Clara. "What do you want in return for this sudden generosity?" Wade smiled again, and Clara felt ice crawl down her spine. "Just one small thing. The Whitmore homestead. That spring of theirs has been causing me considerable trouble. I need it to complete my water management system for the entire valley." Henry stepped up beside Sam. "That spring has been in my wife's family for 3 generations. It's not for sale." "Everything's for sale, Mr. Whitmore. It's just a matter of finding the right price." Wade's gaze shifted to Clara. "Or the right pressure point." Sam's hand dropped to his revolver. "Careful, Wade." "Oh, I'm always careful, Mr. Brennan. Unlike some people." Wade gestured to Marcus, who produced a folded piece of paper. "I've done some research on your house guest. Mrs. Clara Sullivan, widow, formerly of Greenville, Missouri. Left town rather suddenly after her husband's death. Some might say she was running from something. Clara's heart stopped. I wasn't running. I was starting over. Of course you were. Wade's voice dripped false sympathy. But it's interesting, isn't it, how trouble seems to follow you. Your husband dies.
You flee west with a baby. You nearly drown in a flood. And now here you are, in the middle of a land dispute that has nothing to do with you. He paused. Or does it? Leave her out of this, Sam growled. I wish I could, Mr. Brennan, truly. But you see, Mrs. Sullivan's sister happens to be married to the one man standing between me and complete control of this valley's water supply. That makes her very relevant indeed. The room erupted in angry shouts. The mayor banged his gavel uselessly, his pleas for order drowned out by the chaos. Clara stood frozen, her mind racing. Wade was trying to paint her as an outsider, a troublemaker, someone who'd brought discord to a peaceful community. And some people were listening. She could see it in their faces, the doubt, the suspicion, the fear. That's enough. The voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise like a blade. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. An elderly woman had risen from her seat near the front. Clara recognized her, Sarah Jennings, the widow who ran the boarding house. She was small and frail-looking, but her eyes were sharp as flint. I've lived in this valley for 40 years, Sarah said. I was here before Cornelius Wade bought his first acre. I watched him build his empire, one stolen piece of land at a time. I saw what happened to the Mexicans who wouldn't sell, and the Irish farmers who tried to organize against him, and the young couple who disappeared one night and were never seen again. The room had gone deadly silent. This woman, Sarah pointed at Clara, hasn't done anything except survive a flood and love her family. But you, she turned to Wade, you've done plenty, and we all know it. We've just been too scared to say it out loud. Wade's composure cracked slightly. Mrs. Jennings, I've always respected you. Don't you dare. Sarah's voice was cold. I may be old, but I'm not senile. I remember everything. And so does everyone else in this room, even if they're too afraid to admit it. The silence stretched. Then another voice spoke up. She's right. A young rancher stood, his face pale but determined. Wade's men threatened my wife last month. Said if I didn't sell, something might happen to her when she went to town alone. My cattle were poisoned, another man called out. 20 head, dead overnight. Sheriff said it was natural causes, but we all know better. He bought the sheriff years ago, someone else added, and the banker, and half the merchants in town. The dam had broken. Story after story poured out. Decades of intimidation, corruption, and violence that had been endured in silence. Clara watched Wade's face as his carefully constructed image crumbled before his eyes. But she also saw something else, something that made her blood run cold. Wade wasn't worried. If anything, he looked amused. Sam, she whispered urgently, something's wrong. Before Sam could respond, the doors at the back of the hall burst open. A dozen armed men poured in, rifles raised, spreading out to surround the crowd. Clara recognized some of them. Wade's ranch hands, men she'd seen at a distance during her time in the territory. But others were strangers, hard-faced men with the look of hired killers. Thank you all for that enlightening testimony, Wade said, his voice cold now, all pretense of civility gone. I was hoping you'd cooperate peacefully, but since you've chosen defiance, we'll do this the hard way. Sam drew his revolver, but 3 rifles swung to point at his chest. I wouldn't, Marcus Wade said, stepping forward with a pistol aimed at Clara's head, unless you want to explain to that baby girl why her mama didn't come home. Sam froze. That's better. Marcus smiled,
and Clara saw a cruelty there that exceeded even his father's. Now everyone's going to stay calm while we have a little discussion about property rights.
"You can't do this," Henry said. "There are witnesses. The territorial marshal." "Is 3 days away," Wade interrupted. "A lot can happen in 3 days. Fires, for instance, accidents, disappearances." He looked around the room at the frightened faces. "Or nothing at all. It all depends on how cooperative you choose to be." Clara's mind raced. Josie was at home with Abby. Safe, for now. But how long before Wade's men went to the homestead? "What do you want?" she heard herself say. Wade turned to her, eyebrows raised. Mrs. Sullivan, finally deciding to participate. "You want the spring? Fine, take it. Just let everyone go." "Clara, no!" Sam grabbed her arm. "It's not worth dying over." Clara met his eyes, trying to communicate something she couldn't say aloud. "It's just water. Just land. Let him have it." Wade studied her for a long moment. Then he laughed. "You know, I almost believe you mean that. You'd sacrifice everything to protect these people." "How noble," he shook his head. "But I'm afraid it's not that simple anymore. You see, Mr. Brennan killed one of my men. That can't go unanswered. Fletcher Cobb was trying to kill us. He was following orders, my orders." Wade's voice went hard. "And when someone disobeys me, there are consequences." He nodded to Marcus. The young man moved before anyone could react, slamming the butt of his pistol into Sam's skull. Sam crumpled to the floor, and Clara screamed. "Sam!" She dropped to her knees beside him, cradling his head in her lap. Blood poured from a gash above his ear, and his eyes were unfocused, glazed. "Clara," he mumbled. "Run." "I'm not leaving you." Tears streamed down her face. "I'm not leaving you." Marcus laughed. Touching, really. He grabbed Clara's arm and yanked her to her feet. "But you're coming with us, sweetheart. Father wants to have a more private conversation." "No!" Henry lunged forward, but 2 of Wade's men intercepted him, driving rifle butts into his stomach. Clara watched in horror as chaos erupted around her. The townsfolk were shouting, struggling, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Sam was unconscious on the floor. Henry was doubled over in pain, and Marcus was dragging her toward the door. "Let her go!" The voice came from outside. Strong, commanding, cutting through the chaos. Everyone froze. A man stepped through the doorway, and Clara felt her heart skip. He was tall and lean, with a silver star pinned to his chest, and a rifle held loosely in his hands. "U.S. Marshal William Bennett," he announced, "and you're all under arrest." For one breathless moment, hope surged through Clara's chest. Then Wade laughed. "Bennett, I was told you weren't due for 3 more days." Plans change. The marshal's eyes swept the room, taking in the armed men, the frightened civilians, the unconscious man on the floor. "Looks like I arrived just in time." "Did you?" Wade's voice was soft, dangerous. "You're 1 man against a dozen. Do you really think you can arrest all of us?" "I'm not alone." As if on cue, figures appeared at every window and door. Men and women with rifles, their faces grim and determined. Clara recognized some of them. Ranchers who'd been at the secret meetings, homesteaders who'd suffered under Wade's tyranny. "The people of this territory have had enough," Bennett said. "Every man in this room with a gun who isn't authorized to carry one has 5 seconds to put it down. Starting now." Wade's men looked at each other uncertainly. They were hired killers, mercenaries who worked for money, not loyalty. And the odds had suddenly shifted against them. 5. One man lowered his rifle. 4. Another followed. 3.
Marcus still had his pistol pressed against Clara's temple. His hand was shaking. 2. "Do it," Wade ordered. "Shoot her." 1. The shot that rang out wasn't from Marcus's gun. Sarah Jennings stood 10 feet away, a smoking Derringer in her weathered hand. Marcus Wade stared at her in disbelief, then looked down at the red stains spreading across his shoulder. "I told you," Sarah said quietly. "I remember everything." Marcus collapsed, his pistol clattering to the floor. Clara kicked it away and ran to Sam, who was struggling to sit up. "Clara?" His voice was slurred, confused. "What happened?" "We won." She helped him to his feet, her arm around his waist. "We won, Sam." But even as she said it, her eyes found Cornelius Wade. He stood in the center of the chaos, his men surrendering around him, his son bleeding on the floor. But his face showed no defeat, no fear, only rage. "This isn't over," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence. "Not by a long shot." Bennett stepped forward with handcuffs. "It's over for tonight. You can make your threats from a jail cell." As the marshal led Wade away, Clara felt Sam's arms tighten around her. "I thought I lost you," he murmured into her hair. "When Marcus had that gun to your head." "Shh." She pulled back to look at his face. The blood, the bruising, the fear in his eyes. "I'm here. I'm safe. We're both safe." "Your sister, Josie." Clara's blood went cold. In the chaos, she'd almost forgotten. "Abby!" She spotted Henry across the room, being helped to his feet by the doctor. "We have to get home. If Wade sent men to the homestead—" They didn't wait for an answer. Clara and Sam pushed through the crowd and out into the night, where their horses waited. The ride back to the Whitmore homestead was the longest of Clara's life. "Please," she prayed silently, "please let them be safe." The house was dark when they arrived. Clara's heart stopped. At this hour, there should have been lamplight in the windows, signs of life. "Stay behind me," Sam said, drawing his revolver. They approached slowly, every nerve screaming with tension. The front door hung open, creaking in the night breeze. "Abby," Clara called out. "Abby, it's Clara." Silence. Sam stepped through the door first, Clara close behind. The main room was empty, furniture overturned, signs of a struggle everywhere. "Oh, God," Clara whispered. "Oh, God, no." "Clara!" The voice came from the bedroom. Clara ran toward it, Sam right behind her. Abby was huddled in the corner, Josie clutched to her chest. Both were terrified, but unharmed. "They came," Abby sobbed, as Clara fell to her knees beside them. "Wade's men. They wanted to take us, but Henry's hired hand, the old Mexican man who arrived yesterday, he fought them off, told us to hide." Clara's heart clenched. "Esteban? Esteban was here?" "He said he was looking for Sam. He'd ridden all night." Abby's voice broke. "They took him, Clara. They took him and said—"
Said if you wanted him back alive, Sam would have to come alone to Wade's ranch at dawn. Clara turned to Sam, and what she saw in his face terrified her. Cold, determined, ready to die. "Sam, no! He came here because of me, to warn us, to help us." Sam's voice was flat. "I won't let him die for that." "It's a trap. You know it's a trap." "Of course it is." Sam met her eyes. "But Esteban is family, the only family I have left. I won't abandon him." "Then I'm coming with you." "Clara, don't!" She grabbed his shirt, pulling him close. "Don't you dare tell me to stay behind while you ride off to get yourself killed. We face this together or not at all. You promised me." Sam stared at her for a long moment. Then something in his face crumbled.
I can't lose you, he whispered. I can't. You won't. Clara pressed her forehead against his. But I can't lose you either. So we go together. We fight together. We live or die together.
That's very romantic, Henry said from the doorway. But neither of you is going anywhere alone. If we're riding into Wade's stronghold, we're doing it with an army. Clara turned. Henry stood there with a rifle in his hands and a fierce determination in his eyes. The marshal arrested most of Wade's men in town, but Cornelius escaped in the chaos. He'll be at his ranch, probably with whatever hired guns he has left. Henry's jaw tightened. But so will every rancher and homesteader who stood with us tonight. I sent word while you were checking on Abby. They're gathering now. It'll be a massacre, Sam said. Wade's ranch is a fortress. Maybe, but we're not fighting to destroy him. We're fighting to get your friend back and end this once and for all. Henry stepped forward, placing a hand on Sam's shoulder. You've given us something we haven't had in years, Brennan. Hope. The least we can do is help you protect the people you love. Clara watched emotions war across Sam's face. Pride, fear, gratitude, determination. Finally, he nodded. Dawn, he said. We ride at dawn. The night passed in the blur of preparation. Clara stayed with Josie and Abby while the men gathered weapons and made plans. She nursed her daughter, sang her lullabies, tried to memorize every detail of her face, just in case. You should stay here, Abby said quietly, watching her. With Josie. With me. Let the men handle this. I can't. Clara, I know what you're going to say. That I have a responsibility to my daughter. That nothing is more important than being here for her. Clara's voice cracked. But Sam is going into that fight for me. For us. If something happens to him and I'm not there, I could never forgive myself. Abby was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took Clara's hand. Thomas would be proud of you, you know. Clara looked up, tears blurring her vision. You think so? I know so. You've become the woman he always knew you could be. Strong, brave, willing to fight for what matters. Abby squeezed her hand. Go, be with your man. I'll take care of Josie. If I don't come back, you will. Abby's voice was firm. You will come back, and you'll marry that cowboy, and you'll give my niece a father and brothers and sisters. I refuse to accept any other outcome. Clara laughed through her tears and pulled her sister into a fierce embrace. I love you, Abby. I love you too. Now go, before I change my mind and tie you to a chair. Clara kissed Josie one last time, breathing in her sweet baby scent, feeling the soft warmth of her against her chest. Mama loves you, she whispered. Mama loves you so much. Then she walked out into the pre-dawn darkness, where Sam waited with their horses. You sure about this? He asked. Clara swung into her saddle and met his eyes. More sure than I've ever been about anything. Sam nodded slowly. Then he reached across the space between them and took her hand. Whatever happens today, Clara Sullivan, I want you to know something. What? You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever. A reason to live. A reason to hope. A reason to believe that maybe, just maybe, the world isn't as cruel as I thought it was. He brought her hand to his lips. I love you. I should have said it sooner. I should have said it every day since we met. But I'm saying it now, and I mean it with everything I am. Clara's heart swelled until she thought it might burst. I love you too, Sam Brennan. Now let's go get your family back. They rode toward Wade's ranch as the first light of dawn broke over the mountains. Behind them, 24 armed men followed,
Ahead of them, an uncertain future waited. But they faced it together. And together, Clara was beginning to believe, they could survive anything. The Wade Ranch loomed before them as the sun crested the eastern mountains.
Clara counted at least 8 men positioned around the main house, rifles glinting in the early light. More would be inside. Wade had retreated to his fortress, and he'd brought enough firepower to hold it.
"How do we do this?" she asked quietly.
Sam's eyes swept the property, calculating. Wade wants me. That's the trade. Esteban for me.
"That's not happening."
It might have to. Sam's voice was flat.
"If there's no other way."
"There's always another way."
Clara grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. "We didn't come all this way, fight all these battles, just to hand you over to a murderer."
She's right. Henry moved up beside them, his rifle ready. "We go in together, fast and hard. Hit them before they can organize."
"They'll kill Esteban the moment we attack."
"Not if we give them something else to worry about." Henry nodded toward a group of riders circling around the far side of the ranch. "Jenkins and his boys are setting up on the north ridge. When they start shooting, Wade's men will have to split their attention. That's when we move." Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I go in first, alone. Make Wade think I'm surrendering. Sam, just long enough to find out where they're holding Esteban. Once I know, I signal you. Then we hit them with everything we've got." Clara's heart clenched. It was a dangerous plan. Suicidal, maybe. But she could see no other option. "How will you signal?" "I'll fire a shot. 2 quick, 1 long. That's when you move."
"And if something goes wrong?"
Sam reached out and cupped her face in his hands. "Then you get out. You take Josie and you run, and you don't look back. Promise me."
"I can't promise that. Clara, I said I can't."
Tears burned in her eyes.
"I won't promise to abandon you. I won't promise to live my life wondering what might have been if I'd been brave enough to stay. So don't ask me to."
Sam stared at her for a long moment. Then he kissed her, hard, desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her.
"I love you," he said against her lips. "I know. Now go, and come back to me."
Sam rode down toward the ranch with his hands raised. Clara watched from the ridge, her heart in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to follow him, to put herself between him and danger. But she forced herself to stay still, to trust the plan, to trust him. "He'll be all right," Henry said quietly. "That man survived worse than Cornelius Wade."
"You don't know that."
"No, but I believe it." Henry checked his rifle. "Sometimes belief is all we've got." A figure emerged from the main house as Sam approached. Cornelius Wade, flanked by 2 armed men. Even from this distance, Clara could see the rage radiating off of him. "Brennan!" Wade's voice carried in the still morning air. "I'm surprised you came. I thought you might be a coward after all." "I'm here for Esteban." Sam reined in his horse. "Let him go, and we can settle this between us." "Settle it?" Wade laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You killed my nephew. You turned my own community against me. You took everything I've worked for and burned it to the ground. There's no settling that." Fletcher Cobb tried to murder innocent people. Whatever happened to him, he brought on himself. "And Marcus? My own son, shot by that old witch in the town hall?" "Marcus is alive. He'll recover. More than he deserved after what he did." Wade's face contorted with fury. "Get off your horse, now, or I'll have my men put a bullet in your friend's head." Sam dismounted slowly, his hands still raised. "Good,"
Wade gestured to his men. "Search him. Take any weapons." Clara watched as 2 men patted Sam down, removing his revolver and a knife from his boot. Her fingers tightened on her own rifle. "Not yet," she told herself. "Not yet." "Now bring him inside," Wade ordered, "and send word to the others.
We're going to make an example of Samuel Brennan, something this territory will never forget." Sam disappeared into the house, and Clara's world narrowed to a single point of focus.
"Come on," she prayed. "Give us the signal."
Minutes passed. Each one felt like an hour. Clara's muscles ached from tension, her eyes burning from staring at the house.
"Something's wrong," she murmured. "It's taking too long."
"Give him time," Henry said. "He needs to find Esteban first."
"What if he can't? What if they've already—"
A gunshot split the air, then another, then a third drawn out, unmistakable. "That's it!" Henry raised his rifle. "Everyone move!" Clara kicked her horse forward before Henry finished speaking. She could hear the others behind her, the thunder of hooves and the crack of rifles, as Jenkins' men opened fire from the north ridge. Chaos erupted around the ranch. Wade's men scrambled for cover, torn between the attackers coming from 2 directions. Clara saw one man fall, then another. She didn't stop to see if they were dead. The front door of the house burst open, and Sam emerged dragging Esteban with one arm, a pistol in his free hand. The old man was bloodied and limping, but alive. "Sam!" Clara screamed. He looked up, and their eyes met across the chaos. That's when Marcus Wade stepped out behind him. The younger Wade had bandages wrapped around his shoulder, his face pale from blood loss. But the gun in his hand was steady, and it was pointed directly at Sam's back. "No!" Clara raised her rifle without thinking. Marcus fired. Sam spun, pushing Esteban to the ground as the bullet caught him in the side. He staggered, but didn't fall, turning to face Marcus with his pistol raised. "You killed my men," Marcus snarled. "You humiliated my family. Now you're going to die like the dog you are." "Maybe." Sam's voice was strained, his free hand pressed against his wound. "But not today." He fired. Marcus jerked backward, his gun falling from nerveless fingers, a red bloom spreading across his chest. He collapsed against the doorframe, staring at Sam with something like disbelief. You actually—" "I gave you a chance." Sam's voice was cold. "You should have taken it." Marcus Wade slumped to the ground and didn't move again. Clara reached Sam just as his legs gave out. She caught him, lowering him to the ground, her hands already pressing against the wound in his side. "Don't you dare," she said fiercely. "Don't you dare die on me, Sam Brennan." "Wasn't planning on it." His smile was weak, pained. "Just need to catch my breath." "You've been shot." "Noticed that." He winced. "Through and through, I think. Hurts like hell, but I've had worse." Gunfire still echoed around them, but it was dying down. Wade's remaining men were surrendering, outnumbered and outgunned. The battle was ending. But Clara barely noticed. All she could see was Sam's face, pale and drawn, his blood seeping between her fingers. "Stay with me," she begged. "Please, stay with me." "Always." Sam reached up and touched her face with a blood-stained hand. "Told you I'd come back." "This isn't back. This is bleeding out on the ground." "Details." He coughed, and Clara's heart nearly stopped. But his eyes stayed focused on hers, clear despite the pain. "Is Esteban—" "I am here, patron." The old man crawled to Sam's side, his own injuries forgotten. "You stubborn fool. I told you not to come for me." "Since when do I listen to you?" "Never. That is why I am still here, cleaning up your messes." Esteban's voice cracked.
Do not die on me now, mijo. I am too old to break in a new employer. No promises. But Sam's grip on Clara's hand tightened. Get me inside, and someone find me a doctor before my woman kills me herself. The next hours blurred together in a haze of blood and fear.
The doctor from Ridgewater Springs arrived within the hour, summoned by one of the riders who'd stayed back. He worked on Sam in silence, while Clara paced outside the room, her hands still red with his blood.
He's going to be fine, Abby said, appearing beside her with Josie in her arms. The bullet passed clean through. Dr. Morrison's handled worse. You don't know that. I know that man in there has survived a flash flood, an ambush, and a gunfight in a single week. A little bullet isn't going to stop him now. Clara took Josie from her sister's arms, kneading the weight of her daughter against her chest. The baby gurgled happily, oblivious to the trauma around her. I almost lost him, Clara whispered. I almost lost everything. But you didn't. Abby wrapped an arm around her. You're both still here. That's what matters. The bedroom door opened, and Dr. Morrison emerged, wiping his hands on a blood-stained cloth. He'll live, the doctor announced.
Lost a lot of blood, and he's going to be sore for weeks. But he's too stubborn to die. Asked me twice if he could get up and find you. Clara didn't wait for permission. She pushed past the doctor and into the room where Sam lay propped against pillows, his torso wrapped in bandages. Hey, he said weakly as she approached. Hey yourself. Clara sank onto the bed beside him, careful not to jostle his injured side. You scared me half to death. Sorry about that. You should be. But she was crying now, tears of relief streaming down her face. Don't ever do that again. Which part? The getting shot or the surviving? The making me watch while you nearly died. Sam reached up and wiped a tear from her cheek. I made you a promise. I intended to keep it. You almost didn't. Almost doesn't count. He pulled her down gently, pressing his forehead against hers. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And as soon as I can stand up without falling over, I'm going to marry you. If you'll have me. Clara pulled back, staring at him. What? I know it's not the most romantic proposal. I'm lying in bed with a hole in my side, covered in my own blood. But I almost died today without ever asking you to be my wife. And I swore, if I survived, I wouldn't waste another moment. Sam, I love you, Clara Sullivan. I love your daughter like she's my own. I want to spend whatever time I have left on this earth making you both happy. He took her hand in his. Will you marry me? Clara looked at him, this impossible man who had ridden into a flood to save her, who had fought an army to protect her family, who was proposing marriage while still bleeding from a gunshot wound. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Sam's smile was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Good. Now come here and kiss me before I pass out again. She did. The aftermath of the battle took days to sort out. Cornelius Wade had been captured trying to flee during the chaos. Marshal Bennett took him into custody, along with the surviving members of his crew. The charges were extensive: murder, extortion, kidnapping, attempted murder. Wade would spend the rest of his life in prison, if he wasn't hanged first. But Clara noticed something strange in the old man's demeanor during his arrest. The rage had faded, replaced by something that looked almost like relief, like a man finally freed from a burden he'd been carrying too long. He wasn't always like this, Esteban said one evening as they sat on the porch of the Whitmore homestead. Sam was still recovering, but strong enough now to sit up and watch the sunset. Cornelius Wade, I mean. When I first came to this territory, 30 years ago, he was different. Kind, even. His wife was still alive then. His daughter, too.
What happened to them? Clara asked. Esteban's face darkened. Cholera. Took them both in the same week. I remember the funeral. Wade stood at the graves like a man who'd lost his soul. He paused. Maybe he did. Maybe everything he became afterward was just his way of trying to fill that emptiness. That doesn't excuse what he did, Sam said quietly. No, it doesn't. But perhaps it explains it. Esteban looked out at the fading light. We are all capable of becoming monsters, Patron. When we lose the people who make us human, sometimes we lose ourselves as well. Clara thought about Thomas, about the darkness that had threatened to swallow her in the months after his death, about how close she'd come to losing herself in grief. And she thought about Sam, who had lost Rebecca and spent years building walls around his heart, who might have become cold and bitter if circumstances had been different. We don't have to become monsters, she said softly. We can choose differently. Si, señora, Esteban smiled. We can. And that choice, that is what makes us human.
3 months later, Clara stood in the small church in Ridgewater Springs, wearing a white dress that Abby had made from fabric ordered specially from Santa Fe. The building was packed with people, ranchers and homesteaders who had fought beside them, townsfolk who had found their courage that night in the town hall, even Sarah Jennings, who sat in the front row with a satisfied smile on her weathered face. Josie, now walking confidently on her own, served as flower girl. She made it halfway down the aisle before getting distracted by a butterfly that had somehow found its way inside, but nobody minded. And at the altar stood Sam, his wounds healed, his eyes shining with a joy Clara had never seen in him before. You look beautiful, he whispered as she reached his side. You clean up pretty well yourself. The ceremony was simple, the vows traditional. But when Sam placed the ring on Clara's finger, a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother, she felt something shift in the universe. A door closing on the past, a window opening onto the future. I now pronounce you man and wife, the preacher announced. You may kiss the bride. Sam cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle, reverent. Mrs. Brennan, he murmured against her lips. Mr. Brennan, Clara smiled. Now kiss me before all these people get bored. He did. The celebration that followed was unlike anything Ridgewater Springs had ever seen. Tables groaned with food contributed by every family in the territory. Musicians played until their fingers blistered. Children ran wild while adults danced and laughed and toasted to the future. Clara found herself pulled from one group to another, accepting congratulations and well wishes until her face hurt from smiling. But through it all, her eyes kept finding Sam across the crowd. Her husband, she thought, with a thrill that hadn't yet worn off. Her husband. Late in the evening, when the celebration showed no signs of slowing, Sam appeared beside her and took her hand. Come with me, he said. There's something I want to show you. They slipped away from the party and walked to the edge of town where Sam's horse waited. He helped Clara mount, then swung up behind her, his arms encircling her waist. Where are we going? You'll see. They rode in comfortable silence through the darkness, the summer stars blazing overhead. Clara leaned back against Sam's chest, feeling his heartbeat steady against her spine. After about 20 minutes, they crested a small rise, and Clara gasped. Below them, bathed in moonlight, lay the most beautiful valley she had ever seen. A river wound through its heart, glittering like liquid silver, and in the center of it all sat a house. Not large, but solid and welcoming, with lamplight glowing in its windows. What is this place? Ours. Sam's voice was thick with emotion. I bought it last month with the reward money from turning in Wade's men.
It's not much yet, but the land is good, the water is clean, and there's room to grow. He paused. Room for Josie to run and play. Room for more children, if we're blessed. Room for us to build a life together. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Sam, I know you wanted to stay near your sister, and we can, if that's what you want. But I thought maybe you might want a place that's truly ours. A fresh start for both of us. Clara turned in the saddle to face him. In the moonlight, his face was open, vulnerable, all his walls finally down. It's perfect, she whispered. It's absolutely perfect. Sam's smile was like sunrise. Welcome home, Mrs. Brennan. They sat together on that hill until the moon began to set, making plans for the future. Where to put the garden? Which room would be Josie's? How many horses they would raise? How many children they hoped to have? And when they finally rode down to their new home, Clara felt something she hadn't felt since before Thomas died. Peace. 6 months later, winter had come to the territory. Clara stood on the porch of their house, watching Sam teach Josie how to build a snowman. The little girl was bundled in so many layers she could barely move, but her laughter rang out clear and bright in the cold air. Papa, it's falling! Josie shrieked as the snowman's head tumbled off. That's okay, sweetheart. We'll build it again. That's what we do when things fall down. We build them back up. Clara smiled, her hand resting on the swell of her belly where their second child grew. A son, Esteban predicted confidently, though Clara wasn't sure she believed the old man's folk wisdom. Either way, she'd be happy. The door behind her opened, and Esteban emerged with 2 steaming cups of coffee. For you, Señora. He handed her 1 cup. And for the patron, when he comes inside. Thank you, Esteban. Clara wrapped her cold fingers around the warm ceramic. Will you stay for Christmas? Abby's bringing her famous apple pie. I would not miss it for the world. The old man's eyes crinkled with warmth. This will be Josie's first Christmas with a real family. It should be special. She has a real family, Clara said softly. She's always had a real family. It just took us a while to find each other. Esteban nodded slowly. La familia es todo, he said. Family is everything. Yes. Clara watched as Sam scooped Josie up and spun her around, both of them laughing. Yes, it is. That evening, after Josie had been put to bed and Esteban had retired to his small cabin behind the main house, Clara and Sam sat together before the fire. Happy? Sam asked, his arm around her shoulders. More than I ever thought possible. Clara nestled closer to him. You? I didn't know life could feel like this. Sam's voice was rough with emotion. For years, I thought I was done, that I'd had my chance at happiness and lost it, that the best I could hope for was just existing, getting through each day without too much pain. And now? Now I wake up every morning grateful. For you, for Josie, for this life we're building together. He pressed a kiss to her hair. You saved me, Clara. That day in the flood, I thought I was saving you. But really, you were saving me. Clara tilted her head to look at him. We saved each other. I reckon we did. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance. Outside, snow was falling again, blanketing their little valley in white. Do you ever think about what might have happened? Clara asked quietly. If the flood hadn't come? If we'd never met? Sometimes. Sam's arms tightened around her. I try not to dwell on it. Those kinds of thoughts lead nowhere good. But when I do think about it, I realize something. He turned her to face him. That flood wasn't a disaster. It was a gift. The worst day of your life led you straight to me. And I'd go through 100 more floods, 100 more gunfights, 100 more battles with men like Wade if it meant ending up right here, right now, with you. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Sam Brennan, when did you become such a poet? Must be your influence. He kissed her gently. You make me want to find pretty words for things. Make me want to be better than I am. You're already the best man I know. Then I'll keep trying to be worthy of that. Later that night, as they lay together in the darkness, Clara thought about the journey that had brought her here. She thought about Thomas, who had loved her first and taught her what love could be.
About the grief that had nearly destroyed her, and the courage it had taken to keep going for Josie's sake. About the terrifying moment when the flood had swept away everything she owned, leaving her with nothing but her daughter and her determination to survive. And she thought about Sam, who had appeared like a miracle when she needed him most, who had risked his life for strangers, opened his heart despite his fears, and built a family from the broken pieces of two shattered lives. She thought about Esteban, whose wisdom and loyalty had become the foundation of their household, about Abby and Henry, whose love and support had never wavered, about the community of Ridgewater Springs, who had found the courage to stand together against tyranny. She thought about Josie, sleeping peacefully in the next room, who would grow up knowing she was loved beyond measure, and about the child growing inside her, who would be born into a world of hope and possibility. The flood had taken everything from Clara, her belongings, her plans, her sense of security, but it had given her something far more precious in return. It had given her a home. The next morning, Clara woke to Josie's excited squeals and the smell of coffee brewing. "Mama, Mama, Papa says it's almost Christmas. He says Santa Claus might come if I'm very good." Clara laughed, pulling her daughter into her arms for a hug. "Did he now? I've been very good, Mama, haven't I?" "The very best." Clara kissed Josie's forehead. "Now go help Papa set the table for breakfast. Auntie Abby and Uncle Henry will be here soon." Josie scrambled off toward the kitchen, her excited chatter filling the house with warmth and life. Clara rose and moved to the window, looking out at the snow-covered valley that was now her home. In the distance, she could see smoke rising from Esteban's cabin, and beyond that, the road that led to Ridgewater Springs, to Abby and Henry, to the community that had become her family. She felt Sam come up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "The flood," Clara admitted. "The day we met. Seems like a lifetime ago." "It does." Clara leaned back against him. "But I was thinking about something else, too. Something Esteban said once." "What's that?" "He said, God doesn't send storms to destroy us. He sends them to show us where we need to be." Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he turned her to face him, his gray eyes filled with love. "He was right," Sam said. "That storm led you straight to me, and I will spend every day of my life being grateful for it." Clara smiled, rising on her toes to kiss him. "So will I, Sam Brennan. So will I." Outside, the winter sun rose over the mountains, casting golden light across the snow. Inside, a family gathered around a table, their laughter and love filling every corner of the house they had built together. The storms of summer were long past, and Clara May Brennan, née Sullivan, had finally found her way home.